You've probably seen those videos about crazy drugs. The ones that always mention the same handful: salvia, bath salts, maybe a frog you're supposed to lick if you're feeling brave. And by now, most of us have seen enough "don't do drugs" PSAs to know that every substance either turns you into a rock star, a zombie, or a Florida man. But today, we're going deeper. I'm talking about drugs so weird, so cursed, and so under the radar that even hardcore internet chem nerds go, "Yeah, no thanks." These aren't your typical high school weed brownies stories. No, these are the kind of substances that sound like they were cooked up by a mad scientist in his basement at 3 a.m. just to see how quickly a human brain can regret existing. Some of them last minutes, some last days. Some don't just mess with your mind, they try to delete it. And almost all of them raise one very important question. Who in the world thought it was a good idea to try this in the first place? So buckle up, because this isn't just a list, it's a guided tour through the chemical haunted house of human stupidity. I'll give you the history, the effects, the insane trip reports, and of course, plenty of jokes to keep us from crying about how terrifying this stuff really is. And remember, this video isn't medical advice. It's sit back and laugh while realizing you'll never look at Walmart, Toads, or canned air the same way again. Number 1. Salvinorin B-methoethyl ether, super salvia. Most people have at least heard of salvia. It's that weird clant your friend's older cousin smoked once that turned him into a chair for 15 minutes and made him swear off drugs forever. Salvia already has a reputation as the nightmare roller coaster of psychedelics. What if I told you there's something even worse? Something that makes regular salvia look like a light warm-up before the real trauma. Meet Salvinorin B-methoethyl ether, or as I like to call it, super salvia, the cursed chemical nightmare that no sane person should ever willingly put in their body. Now let's get one thing straight. This isn't some ancient plant ritual or traditional medicine. Nobody in a remote jungle has been taking this stuff for centuries and telling stories about it around the fire. This is a lab-made creation. Some chemist somewhere decided to tinker with salvia's already terrifying active compound, slap on some extra chemistry, and create its evil twin. It's the drug equivalent of someone looking at a tornado and saying, but what if it also shot lightning out of it? Regular salvia is short and brutal. You smoke it, you get launched into a nightmare, and in 15 minutes you're back on Earth, wondering why you did that to yourself. The saving grace of salvia is that it doesn't last long. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. Painful, but quick. Super salvia? Oh no, this monstrosity lasts 2 to 3 hours. Hours! Imagine getting drop-kicked out of reality into some interdimensional nightmare world, and instead of it ending quickly, you're stuck there for the length of a Marvel movie. If regular salvia is like being shoved underwater for a minute, super salvia like being dropped at the bottom of the ocean with no way up. And here's the kicker, it's 5 times stronger than normal salvia. If normal salvia is like falling off your bike, this is like getting hit by a train. People who have tried it, very few people by the way, because most drug explorers take one look at this thing and nope out, say that the intensity is beyond anything they've ever experienced. One tiny microgram dose can throw you into another dimension. Micrograms, that's smaller than the grains of salt you put on fries. The scariest part is time dilation. Regular salvia already makes minutes feel like decades. People come back from a 10-minute trip saying things like, "I lived a whole other life as a factory worker in Kansas." Now imagine that stretched over 2 to 3 hours. That's not a trip, that's basically getting trapped in a nightmare simulation with no escape. One guy described it like this: "I wasn't seeing objects anymore, I was perceiving my own mind stretched across dimensions. It felt like I was a 5-dimensional being moving through a 4-dimensional membrane." Which, I don't know about you, sounds less like fun and more like the kind of thing you hear right before someone gets locked in a padded room. And then there are the reports. Oh boy, there are only a handful of people who've taken this stuff, which already tells you how cursed it is. In one study, a psychonaut took a minuscule dose under medical supervision. Immediately, his face froze like he was having a stroke. His head pulled back in a weird way and his hands started moving unnaturally slow, almost like a puppet. He remembered none of it. None.
He just woke up later like, so, how bad was it? Another report comes from a chemist who made the compound himself. He took it and said he fell through the floor into a world of eerie sounds, got grabbed by a creature that spoke to him in a disturbing voice, and then suddenly found himself living in the 1950s. Not visiting, living. He could read newspapers. He remembered a whole childhood, a job, even his identity as a person who had apparently always lived there. For him, that was reality. And then snap, he was back in his own time. Can you imagine the mental whiplash of that? 1 second you're chain smoking in 1953, the next you're back in your bedroom with your laptop open? And here's a real question. Why would anyone do this? Seriously, at least with most drugs, there's some appeal. Weed makes you laugh. MDMA makes you feel like you're hugging the universe. Even hardcore stuff like DMT has people describing spiritual awakenings. Super salvia? The reviews are in and they all say the same thing. Pure horror, no fun, would not recommend. Even the bravest psychonauts on the internet, people who casually smoke things that sound like alien dust, are like, yeah, I'm not touching that. Physically, it doesn't seem to be toxic the way some chemicals are. But mentally, it's a gamble with your sanity. When you combine extreme intensity, long duration, and time loops that make eternity feel real, you're basically putting your brain in a washing machine set to nightmare mode. And since this is a research chemical, the long-term effects are a complete mystery. It could fry your mental health in ways nobody even understands yet. The best way to picture it, if normal salvia is a sketchy carnival ride that makes you throw up, super salvia is a plane crash you somehow live through in slow motion. If regular salvia is like trauma light, super salvia is the family-sized combo pack of trauma. It's like pressing New Game Plus on suffering. People don't come back from it with profound lessons about life. They come back saying, I can't explain what I saw, but I never want to see it again. And that's why this drug sits at number 1 on our list. Because no matter how deep you dive into psychedelic forums, no matter how adventurous the community is, almost nobody touches this thing. It's just not worth it. So if you ever hear somebody bragging that they've got super salvia, do yourself a favor, smile, nod, and then run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. Because this isn't a fun story waiting to happen, it's a nightmare waiting to ruin your brain.
Number 2, 4-CMA, the cursed MDMA. If you've ever heard of MDMA, you probably know it by its fun nicknames. Ecstasy, Molly, that little pill people at raves pop before they start hugging strangers and telling them how beautiful their souls are. MDMA has a reputation as the party drug of good vibes, all about music, lights, and feeling like the world is wrapped in a warm blanket. Now imagine taking that idea, twisting it into something sinister, and ending up with a drug that doesn't just ruin the party, it ruins your entire brain. Ladies and gentlemen, meet 4-CMA, the cursed Frankenstein cousin of MDMA that proves not all chemistry experiments deserve to see the light of day. So what exactly is 4-CMA? Well, it's one of those so-called research chemicals. And if you've never heard that phrase before, here's the simple explanation. A research chemical is basically when scientists play Minecraft with molecules. They tinker with existing drugs, changing this piece here and that atom there, to see if they can make something new, something more effective, more useful, or just different enough to dodge drug laws. Most of the time, these chemical spin-offs never make it anywhere. They're like failed prototypes, gathering dust in a lab notebook. But sometimes they slip out into the world, and suddenly people are testing them not in a lab, but in their own brains. 4-CMA popped up in the 1960s, originally intended to behave like a stimulant, something kind of like amphetamines. The scientists probably imagined a new pick-me-up drug for medical use, but when they actually tested it, the effects weren't stimulating at all. Instead, it leaned more toward an antidepressant vibe. You didn't get that buzzing, energized high, you just got a mildly pleasant, floaty feeling. So it never went anywhere in medicine. But as the decades rolled on, underground chemists and shady dealers found it, dusted it off, and decided, hey, let's give this thing a spin. And here's where it gets dangerous, because while 4-CMA might feel kind of like a watered-down MDMA at first,
gentle mood lift, bit of euphoria. The long-term effects are absolutely brutal. Studies in rats found that it permanently reduced serotonin in the brain. Permanently. One dose could fry the delicate system that controls your mood, happiness, and sense of well-being. In plain English, it kills your serotonin receptors. And once they're gone, they're gone. No reboot, no respawn, no coming back. Imagine taking a pill that basically installs depression into your operating system forever. That's 4-CMA. There's a chilling report from animal studies that showed even a month after a single dose, serotonin levels were still way down. Now think about how devastating MDMA come-downs are supposed to be. Those stories of people feeling drained and empty the next day after a heavy night out. Multiply that by infinity, and you've got 4-CMA. One Reddit user put it best: it's like frying your brain with the kind of crash you'd normally only get after a lifetime of MDMA abuse in one sitting. Now here's the creepy part. This drug didn't just stay in the lab, it actually made its way into the real world, mixed into pills at festivals and on the black market. In fact, it was identified at the Tomorrowland Festival in 2015. Yes, Tomorrowland, the giant electronic music paradise full of neon lights, lasers, and people in candy-colored outfits hugging each other to death. Somewhere in that sea of ravers, pills were going around that contained this chemical time bomb. And think about that. People expecting the warm, fuzzy embrace of Molly, instead swallowing a serotonin-destroying grenade. Talk about the worst surprise party ever. By 2019, studies detected 4-CMA in pressed pills again. That's the scariest part about research chemicals. You never really know what you're buying. Dealers press these mystery substances into tablets, slap on an ecstasy logo, and sell them to kids who think they're getting MDMA. Instead, they're swallowing something that could ruin their brain chemistry permanently. Imagine biting into a cookie expecting chocolate chips, and instead it's filled with thumbtacks. That's what 4-CMA is like. And here's the cruel twist. Because the drug initially feels kind of okay, mildly pleasant, calming, it tricks people into thinking it's safe. Oh, it's not as intense as MDMA. Maybe it's just a smoother version. No, it's more like the Grim Reaper showing up in a clown costume. It looks harmless at first, but the long-term consequences are devastating. Users who abused it reported a type of depression so deep, it felt irreversible, like living in the shadow of an MDMA come-down that never ended. One researcher described it as an irreversible depression that could feel like an MDMA come-down every day for the rest of your life. Imagine waking up every morning with that drained, chemically empty feeling, unable to enjoy anything, unable to feel happiness forever. And here's the messed up part. Some vendors still sell it. Knowing full well how destructive it is, they ship it out anyway because profit always talks louder than safety. That means somewhere right now, a pill with 4-CMA could be floating around a music festival, waiting to ruin someone's brain who had no idea what they were taking. Now let's compare. If MDMA is like the fun, party-loving cousin who brings pizza to the get-together, 4-CMA is like the evil twin who shows up uninvited, burns your house down, and then blames you for it. The upsides of MDMA, the empathy, the joy, the euphoria, are all muted. The downsides, depression, serotonin depletion, neurotoxicity, are dialed up to 11. It's the worst trade deal in history. You don't even get the fun part before the suffering kicks in. Picture it like this. MDMA is like renting a sports car for the weekend. You get a thrilling ride, but Monday morning, you're broke and tired. 4-CMA is like renting a sports car, except it explodes on the highway, leaves you stranded in the desert, and also permanently deletes the concept of happiness from your brain. Nobody in their right mind would willingly choose that option. And yet, people did. People are still doing it, not knowingly, because again, it's sneaky. It shows up pressed into pills, disguised as something else. That's why it's one of the most dangerous substances out there. At least with things like heroin or meth, you know what you're getting into. This one lures you in by pretending to be harmless. One user online described the aftermath like this: I thought I was getting Molly. Instead, I got months of crushing depression. It's like the drug gave me a curse I couldn't shake. Others have said the emotional flatness is worse than anything they've ever experienced. Some even compared it to being emotionally lobotomized, like all the color drained out of life. So why is it still around? Simple. The world of underground drugs is messy. Laws can't keep up with every new chemical variation. Ban one, and chemists tweak it slightly to make something technically legal, even if it's dangerous. 4-CMA is one of those cursed leftovers, a drug that should have stayed locked in a lab drawer, but instead crawled into the black market like a cockroach. If there's one lesson here, it's this: not everything with a fancy scientific name is worth trying. Some things exist only to remind us that humans will literally put anything into their bodies if they think it might make them feel good for 5 minutes. But this one, it's not even good. It's like being offered a cookie made of concrete. Why would you eat it? Why? So remember the name, 4-CMA. If you see it, if you hear it, if someone tries to hand it to you at a festival, do not take it. Because this isn't a party drug. This isn't even a bad drug. This is a nightmare disguised as fun. A chemical trick that gives you a small smile up front and then rips your serotonin system to shreds. If MDMA is sunshine in a pill, 4-CMA is the black hole that eats it alive. And the last thing you want to do is get caught in that gravitate.
Number 3. Pyros, the bath salts nightmare. Back in the early 2010s, the news couldn't shut up about bath salts. Every other headline was some Florida man stripping naked, running through traffic, or trying to eat somebody's face while allegedly high on this mystery drug. People joked about it, but there was a real epidemic of madness happening, and at the center of it all was a class of chemicals known as pyrrolidines, or pyros for short. And if you thought crack was bad or meth was bad, pyros make those look like light snacks. This stuff is addiction weaponized. Let's start with how these things work. Pyros are synthetic stimulants, chemically engineered to mess with your dopamine and norepinephrine systems in the brain. That means they crank up your pleasure and alertness circuits to 11, but in the most chaotic way possible. Think of it like hot wiring your brain's reward center with jumper cables. For the first few hits, you feel invincible, wired, euphoric. But the moment it fades, your brain screams for more. And unlike other drugs where people sometimes choose to stop halfway through, with pyros, it's nearly impossible. The compulsion to redose is overwhelming. People don't stop until the bag is gone or until they've completely lost their minds. That's why they're considered up to 20 times more addictive than crack. 20 times. Crack cocaine already ruins lives at lightning speed. Now imagine something so powerful that even seasoned addicts refuse to touch it because they know the second they start, they'll be gone. That's pyros. The stories from people who've used them are terrifying. One person described starting with a small binge and ending up awake for days, hallucinating shadow people in every corner, convinced that the walls were breathing. Another said they flushed their stash down the toilet because they started seeing creatures in the room, only to immediately regret it and actually consider digging through the pipes to get it back. That's how desperate this drug makes you. People literally sewer diving for another hit. And here's the worst part. The addiction doesn't just make you want more. It also makes you insanely horny. Yeah, pyros don't just scramble your dopamine circuits, they light up your sexual drive like fireworks. Users report going on non-stop, days-long sessions, compulsively watching porn, unable to stop even as they're collapsing from exhaustion. Some people call it gooning, and pyros turn you into the Michael Jordan of gooning. I know that sounds funny, but think about it. This isn't just your average teenage-level obsession. We're talking about a drug that can make a person spend 72 hours straight in a dark room, redosing constantly, glued to a screen, lost in compulsive behavior until they literally pass out. Imagine meth multiplied by 5 with the side order of madness. And of course, the bath salts epidemic didn't help. For a while, these chemicals were being sold openly at gas stations and convenience stores, disguised as plant food or bath salts with labels that said, "not for human consumption." Everyone knew exactly what they were for, but the loophole let dealers sell them legally.
So there you had it. People buying packets of mystery white powder at gas stations, smoking it, snorting it, vaping it, and then waking up in a psychiatric ward or on the evening news for biting somebody's nose off. The bath salt scare wasn't just media hype. Yes, the famous Miami zombie story about a guy eating another man's face turned out to be more complicated, but countless other incidents involved extreme paranoia, hallucinations, violence, and psychotic breaks. The reason is simple. Pyros push your brain so far beyond its normal limits that reality itself starts to unravel. Sleep deprivation, dopamine overload, compulsive behavior, all of it combines into a recipe for absolute chaos. Now here's the especially diabolical part. Every time authorities banned one specific chemical, shady online chemists would just tweak the formula slightly and release a new version. Same drug, different name, still legal, at least temporarily. Dealers didn't even know what the new variations would do. They were literally selling chemical experiments to desperate people with no testing, no safety, and no regard for what would happen. One packet might contain a slightly less harmful version, another might contain something far stronger and more toxic. It was chemical roulette. And yes, people actually turned this nightmare into vape juice. Somebody somewhere decided it would be a great idea to put pyros into a cartridge so you could hit them like a jewel. Imagine that, the world's worst vape pen. While other people are puffing on fruity mango clouds, you've got some poor soul in his basement hitting pyro vape after pyro vape, staying awake for 10 days, hallucinating shadow monsters, and compulsively jerking off until he lands in urgent care. If that isn't dystopian, I don't know what is. To make it worse, pyros don't just wreck your mental health, they can also cause severe physical problems, heart issues, strokes, kidney damage, the works. And because they're constantly being redesigned in underground labs, nobody knows the exact toxicity of each version. Some could be relatively mild, others could kill you on the spot. It's like drinking random bottles of chemicals labeled mystery soda and hoping for the best. And yet, despite all this, people still chase them. That's the level of compulsion we're talking about. Once someone starts, stopping feels impossible. Unlike other drugs where people hit rock bottom and say never again, pyro users describe feeling enslaved, like the drug rewires their brain to prioritize it above everything else. Food, sleep, relationships, even survival. It's not just addiction, it's chemical possession. Picture it like this. Crack cocaine is a monster that sneaks into your house and wrecks the place. Pyros, they're the monster that moves in, redecorates, chains you to the radiator, and refuses to leave. And while it's doing that, it's also throwing wild sex parties in your brain that you can't escape from. Sounds ridiculous, but for the people who have been trapped in it, that's reality. No wonder the bath salts epidemic hit so hard. People didn't realize what they were getting into until it was too late. They thought they were buying something cheap and fun at the corner store, and instead they got the chemical equivalent of a nuclear meltdown in their brains. By the time law enforcement finally caught up and banned specific compounds, the damage was already done. So what's the takeaway here? Simple. If you ever hear the word pyros, run. If someone offers you bath salts, don't laugh it off like it's just some meme from 2012. It's not. These drugs don't just ruin lives, they swallow them whole. You don't dabble in pyros, you don't casually try them once, because once they get their hooks in, they don't let go. Out of all the bizarre and dangerous substances in this world, pyros stand out as one of the most addictive, destructive, and humiliating classes of drugs ever invented. They don't just take your health, they don't just take your sanity, they take your dignity, your control, and your ability to stop yourself from going back for more. If cocaine is the devil on your shoulder whispering, "Do another line," pyros are the devil kicking down your front door, chaining you to the couch, and forcing you to binge until your brain gives out. And that, my friends, is why these chemicals are some of the craziest, most dangerous drugs you probably never heard of, but should definitely never, ever go near. Number 4. 5-MeO-DMT, the God molecule from hell. Most people who know about psychedelics have at least heard of DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. It's the one where people smoke it, blast off into hyperspace, meet machine elves, and then come back 15 minutes later crying about how the universe is made of love and geometry. DMT has this reputation as a mystical, spiritual, sometimes even healing experience. Now imagine taking that, mutating it, and turning it into a chemical coin flip between cosmic enlightenment and absolute existential terror. That's 5-MeO-DMT, better known as the God molecule. And let me tell you, if this is God, then God is kind of an asshole. First off, yes, it's natural. Unlike the lab-born nightmares we've already talked about, 5-MeO-DMT actually exists in nature. You can find it in certain plants and, most famously, in the venom of a particular toad. That's right. There's a desert toad out there whose skin is basically carrying a psychedelic nuke. Some people literally go out, squeeze venom out of a toad's glands, dry it into crystals, and then smoke it. Which already raises the question, who looked at a toad and thought, yeah, I'm gonna smoke that? Humans are wild. Now, what makes 5-MeO-DMT different from regular DMT is the intensity and unpredictability. Regular DMT is like a chaotic theme park ride. You get blasted into a neon fractal universe for about 15 minutes, then it spits you out. With 5-MeO, you're not just visiting another world. You're annihilating your entire sense of self. People describe it as ego death, but that phrase doesn't really capture it. Imagine being erased, not your body, not your memories, you, gone. Nothing left but pure consciousness floating in an infinite void. For some people, this is the most profound, life-changing experience of their existence. For others, it's pure horror. And here's the problem. You don't know which one you're going to get. It's a coin flip between blissful oneness with the universe and the most terrifying existential panic attack imaginable. And unlike regular DMT, which is over in 15 minutes, 5-MeO can last up to 2 hours. 2 hours of either becoming God or screaming inside your own skull thinking you died. No middle ground. Trip reports say it all. Regular DMT bad trips usually sound like, I saw too much, I wasn't ready, I freaked out. Okay, scary, but manageable. 5-MeO bad trips? Titles include things like existential horror, pure terror, facing the abyss, unimaginable death, and I ended up praying to Jesus Christ. That last one's my favorite. Imagine taking a drug so intense that even if you've never prayed in your life, suddenly you're bargaining with Jesus to get you out of it. That's 5-MeO. The crazy part is how often people think they're literally dying. Over and over, users describe the exact same thing, complete certainty that this is it, the end. Goodbye, world. They feel their bodies shutting down. They see themselves dissolving. They believe with 100% conviction that they're dead. And sometimes, they actually are. Unlike most psychedelics, which are relatively safe physically, 5-MeO has been linked to real fatalities. Cases of suffocation, respiratory failure, and cardiac arrest have been documented. So when people say, I thought I was dying, the terrifying reality is that sometimes they're right. And let's not forget the source. There's a whole culture built around toad medicine, where people travel to the desert to have shamans guide them through a venom-smoking ritual. Sounds exotic and mystical, right? Except behind the scenes, it's pretty dark. Toads are being over-milked, populations are collapsing, and people are basically exploiting an endangered species for a high that might traumatize them forever. The irony is that 5-MeO can also be synthesized in a lab. No toads required. But of course, people prefer the natural version because apparently getting your cosmic death trip from an animal is more authentic. Now, let's talk about the actual experience. Best case scenario, you dissolve into white light, merge with the universe, and come back saying things like, I realized we're all one. Death is an illusion. Love is everything. Worst case, you get hurled into a state of absolute panic where your ego fights for its life against annihilation. You scream uncontrollably, thrash around, maybe vomit, maybe soil yourself, and then spend the next 2 hours in existential hell. Fun date night, huh? There are even videos floating around online of people on 5-MeO sessions, and let me tell you, it's not pretty. You'll see people screaming, shaking, convulsing, making noises that don't even sound human. And afterward, they'll either say, "That was the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me," or "I never want to experience that again as long as I live." There's no in-between. The unpredictability makes it one of the most dangerous psychedelics in the world. With mushrooms or LSD, mindset and environment matter. If you treat them with respect, prepare properly, and have a safe setting, you can usually avoid the worst. 5-MeO doesn't care. You can meditate all you want, light candles, chant mantras. It might still decide to turn your consciousness inside out and throw you into the void screaming. It's the chemical embodiment of a chaotic neutral dungeon master. And the ego death thing, let's talk about that. People hype it up like it's some spiritual holy grail, but here's the harsh truth. Ego death is not always a pleasant surrender. For many, it feels like being murdered by your own brain. Imagine clinging desperately to the concept of me while the universe rips it away piece by piece. Some people come back with trauma, unable to process what they went through. Others describe months of lingering anxiety, nightmares, or derealization, feeling like reality isn't real anymore. That's not enlightenment. That's just your psyche getting drop-kicked. And yet, despite all of this, people chase it. Why? Because for the ones who have the good version, the experience is indescribably beautiful. They come back with glowing eyes saying things like, "I understood the nature of existence," or "I became love itself." They swear it cured their depression, ended their fear of death, or gave them spiritual clarity. For them, 5-MeO is a miracle. For others, it's a living nightmare. Like I said, coin flip. So, what's the takeaway here? Simple. 5-MeO DMT is not a casual drug. It's not something you mess around with at a party. It's not even something most experienced psychonauts recommend unless you are absolutely prepared to risk having the worst experience of your life. Because this isn't just a trip. This is Russian roulette with your soul. And sometimes, the bullet is very real. If DMT is like traveling to another dimension and meeting cosmic elves, 5-MeO is like throwing your entire existence into a blender and hoping what comes out is divine light instead of raw terror. Some call it the God molecule, but if you ask me, it's more like the demon molecule. Because sure, you might meet God, but you might also realize God doesn't like you very much.
Number 5. Air Duster, Walmart's final boss. When you think about dangerous drugs, you probably imagine shady street deals, sketchy powders, or weird pills with logo stamped on them. You don't usually imagine the cleaning aisle at Walmart. And yet, here we are, talking about one of the most unexpectedly destructive highs in existence. Air Duster. Yes, the same canned spray people use to clean crumbs out of their keyboards. Turns out, if you inhale it, you don't just get lightheaded, you get one of the most brain-melting addictions on Earth. And no, I'm not exaggerating. First off, let's clear something up. Air Duster is not just compressed air in a can. If it were, this wouldn't even be on the list. The stuff inside those cans is actually a refrigerant gas, chemicals like difluoroethane or tetrafluoroethane. These are heavy gases, heavier than air, and when you inhale them, they don't just make you dizzy, they replace the oxygen in your lungs. That's why your voice drops into that creepy demon register when you huff it. You're literally suffocating your brain without realizing it. That's the twisted trick of Duster. Normally, if you suffocate, your body freaks out. Your brain goes into full panic mode. Fight or flight kicks in, alarms are blaring. Hey, idiot, breathe oxygen or you're gonna die. But when you inhale Duster, your brain gets tricked. Carbon dioxide isn't building up in your lungs, so your body doesn't realize it's suffocating. Instead, you just feel euphoric, light, blissed out. Basically, you're choking yourself to death while your brain says, "This feels amazing." And here's the horrifying part. Every single time you do it, you're killing brain cells. Not metaphorically, literally. The brain can only survive a few minutes without oxygen before cells start dying permanently. So while you're giggling with your new demon voice, your neurons are dropping dead like flies.
Do that long enough, and you're left with permanent brain damage, memory loss, slurred speech, confusion, seizures, even a noticeable drop in IQ. Some users have described it like this: I started smart, I ended dumb. And yet, people get hooked, addicted, because the rush is so instant, so intense, that one hit can turn into 50 hits in a weekend. There's a Reddit post from someone who wrote, "One blast and I was done for. I felt like I needed to feel this way for the rest of my life." That person ended up huffing through 50 cans in just 2 days, parked in a Walmart lot. 50 cans! Imagine the poor cashier seeing the same guy come back every hour buying more Duster. At that point, Walmart isn't just your store, it's your drug dealer. And quitting? Forget it. This stuff has one of the nastiest grips of any inhalant. People relapse constantly, even after rehab. One user said, "I got clean, left rehab, and immediately bought more Duster. I couldn't stop." Another admitted they used it 3 to 10 times a day for 2 years straight. By the time they stopped, they couldn't understand language anymore. Words looked like meaningless shapes on a page. They couldn't grasp basic concepts like family. Imagine your brain getting so scrambled that the idea of mom or dad doesn't even compute anymore. That's the damage we're talking about. And it's not just memory or intelligence. The effects are broad and devastating. Permanent loss of coordination, tremors, slurred speech, seizures, personality changes. In severe cases, straight-up death. People have dropped dead mid-hit from cardiac arrest because the chemicals shocked their hearts. Others have passed out while huffing, suffocated, and never woke up. And yet, people keep chasing it because the rush is that powerful. It gets worse. Some people use Duster for hours on end, not one quick blast. No, they sit there huffing can after can, drowning their brains in chemical gas for entire afternoons. Hours of suffocation at a time, hours of frying brain cells. Imagine doing that every day. It's not just stupid, it's like speed running your way into permanent disability. And the stories? Man, the stories are brutal. One person said they used Duster so much they lost their job, their relationships, and their ability to function. Another said they laughed constantly at everything for no reason, but in reality, their brain was just damaged beyond recognition. One former user admitted, 3 months of huffing and I went from being smart to being the dumbest person anyone knew. Nothing made sense anymore. That's not just addiction, that's a full-on identity erasure. Here's what makes it especially cursed: the accessibility. You don't need a shady hookup. You don't need to know a dealer. You don't even need to be 21. All you need is a Walmart or an office supply store, and you can walk out with your next high in a shopping bag. No one bats an eye if you're buying air Duster. Maybe if you're buying 30 cans at once, but otherwise, you look like someone about to deep clean your PC, not someone about to obliterate their brain. That convenience makes it one of the most dangerous substances out there. And let's be real, dying from air Duster might be one of the lamest ways to go. Imagine your obituary. He passed away from excessive inhalation of Walmart office supplies. Not glamorous, not mysterious, just sad. Nobody wants their last moments on Earth to involve sitting in a parked car with a can of Duster in their mouth. But that's exactly what happens. Online forums are full of heartbreaking confessions. People talking about how they got hooked, how they destroyed their lives, how they can't stop. And the worst part is, some of them never recover. Unlike other drugs where your brain chemistry can sometimes heal, Duster kills brain cells permanently. Once they're gone, they're gone. No amount of therapy, rehab, or recovery brings them back. So if you ever thought Duster was just a harmless way for bored kids to get a buzz, think again. This is one of the most destructive highs out there. It doesn't just waste your time, your money, or your health, it wastes you. Piece by piece, blast by blast, until there's nothing left but a shell of the person you used to be. So remember this: if you ever find yourself holding a can of Duster, wondering what it feels like to take a hit, the answer is simple. It feels like suffocating your brain cells to death while Walmart slowly becomes your corner drug dealer. And let's be honest, that's probably not the legacy you want to leave behind.
Thanks for watching Cool Dude Explains, where comedy meets curiosity. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite myth or question in the comments. Stay curious, stay cool, and I'll see you in the next video.